A Hockey Hall of Famer will have his number retired by the Chicago Blackhawks. We have our women's hockey spotlight, and NHL rookie camps are set to begin. We've got all that and more on today's Locked On NHL podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition of the Locked On NHL podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And you can also now find us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Rachel, it is great to be back and to talk a little hockey with you. And here we are. I mean, things are really going to get started this coming week, but first, some interesting news from around the NHL. The Chicago Blackhawks going to retire the jersey of Hall of Famer Chris Chelios. I have to say this is a deserved honor by Chelios in many ways. I mean, he is in the Hall of Fame for a reason, but I know he's not exactly your favorite player.
He is not. And I will say I hold exactly one grudge in my life, and it is against Chris Chelios. And you know, it's a me thing. It's 100% a me thing. And so, like, if you love Chris Chelios, enjoy that life. I appreciate you and all that you do. But I recall back in the year of our Lord, 1989, when the Montreal Canadiens were playing the Philadelphia Flyers in the playoffs, and Chris Chelios elbowed Brian Propp in the head up against the glass, had to be carted off the ice, a concussion. Just a hugely impactful thing that Chris Chelios did. You might recall, if you remember those days, that Ron Hextall went after Chelios in retaliation later in the series, which, sure, as you do, Ronnie. But yeah, that was a hugely important hockey moment for me as a youth, and I never forgot it. And, you know, I've let like every other sports grudge go in my life, but this one will stick with me, I think, for the rest of my life. That being said, honestly, like, he does deserve this. And I think it's really cool that they're doing it against the Detroit Red Wings, where, you know, he played the other largest number of years of his career. I think it was cool they made the announcement at a Pearl Jam concert because he's friends with them. But I'm just gonna sit here in my grudge and live that life.
Yeah, it was a nice touch to announce it at the concert. And look, you look at Chelios, and one of the old school physical defensemen in the Hall of Fame, 3 Stanley Cup wins, 3 Norris trophies, the Mark Messier Award, and a 7-time postseason All-Star. I mean, the credentials are certainly there, and
it's all great. And
he is one of the few players who was with the Atlanta Thrashers who was in the Hockey Hall of Fame, although we only played 7 games for them. But can't say there's a lot of Atlanta Thrashers in the Hockey Hall of Fame.
Yes, that is also true. But yep, I'll be skipping that ceremony. But again, if that's your thing, enjoy it.
Well, look, I always respected Chris Chelios for his physicality and for his skills as an NHL defenseman, but I totally understand where you're coming from with the grudge. Keeping in mind that there are more than a few fans of other teams that have grudges against Ron Hextall, for example.
Sure.
And some of the things that he did.
Please enjoy those grudges. Enjoy those grudges against Ron Hextall. I do too, for his time as GM of the Flyers.
Yeah, I can understand that as well. But anyway, the Blackhawks going to retire Chris Chelios' number. And I again, congratulations to Chelios on that. And then the other big news from earlier this week, the Ottawa Senators signing defenseman Jake Sanderson, 8 years, $64.4 million is the extension. Your thoughts on this deal and both the term and the length?
Yeah, I think that, by signing the extension now when there's still a year left of his ELC, that really shows a commitment to Sanderson from the Senators, and that they weren't going to let this go, and that Sanderson was going to be like one of the biggest parts of their blue line moving forward. I love him as a player. I think that, interesting just that he's making just a skitch more money than Shabbat on that team on the blue line. I think there is some method to that madness there for sure. But yeah, so he'll have one more year on that ELC, and then that's when the contract kicks in. It will be interesting to see what the Senators' cap management will look like at that point, because they'll have to decide at that point what's going on with Tarasenko on the forward side of things. So I think as the Senators try and take that next step, managing the cap along with it is going to be a huge deal.
It is. And, I guess the question that comes into my mind, I mean, look, no questions about Sanderson's potential. He was the 5th overall pick back in 2020. His dad played in the NHL, Jeff Sanderson, for many years. But, I mean, do you think paying him $8 million a year after just one season in the NHL, do you think that they did this maybe a little bit too soon? Or is he already proven himself to be that good in your mind that they did the right thing by locking him up now?
Yeah, I mean, I think he's that good. And I think, having a full season was enough for me. The term is a risk. It's always a risk when you sign those kind of deals, but I certainly have confidence in the player and his ability.
I mean, I do too, but that's a big commitment. And after
Hmm.
just 1 year in the NHL, look, I understand wanting to, the price is only going to go up. If you wait a year, it's not going to be, you'll have to pay him 9 or 9.5 a year, more likely, if assuming he does well. But that's a big monetary commitment. And, especially for defensemen, they tend to take a little bit longer to reach their full adjustment to the NHL. It's a little bit of a gamble in my mind, giving him that much money after just 1 year in the league.
Oh, sure. It absolutely is. But I think in this case, it's a good gamble to take.
I agree with that. I mean, it's just there's just a little something about it that's leaving me uneasy. I can't say I think it was a bad move, but it's just like that much money that soon. There's just a little voice in the back of my head that says maybe, just maybe, this is more of a gamble than the team should take. But we will see, how this all plays out. And certainly the Senators very happy to have Sanderson all locked up and ready to go. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. Erica Ayala will be joining us for our women's hockey spotlight. That is coming up next.
Football season just kicked off, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long, because right now, when you bet on a Super Bowl winner, you can get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Pick any team to win the Super Bowl. You get bonus bets for every victory. You can use those bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. I'm personally going to bet on the Eagles to do good things, because that's how I roll. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Take some time to visit FanDuel, include money lines, props around your team.
Hey, hockey fans, welcome to another Women's Hockey Spotlight. My name is Erica L. Ayala, but let's get into it.
We finally have more details. We even have signings for the Professional Women's Hockey League, the PWHL. A couple of weeks ago, we made mention of a few details. So let's get into the signings. The Boston team, PWHL Boston, announced their first 3 signings: Hillary Knight, Megan Keller, and Aaron Frankel. Knight, a forward from USA Hockey; Keller, a defender from USA Hockey; and Aaron Frankel, a goaltender from USA Hockey. Now, the window for free agency is September 1st through September 10th, so just through the weekend. Minnesota names Kendall Coyne-Schofield a forward, Kelly Panic a forward, and Lee Steckline. Montreal, no real surprise here, but Montreal goes with Marie-Philippe Poulin, Captain Clutch for Canada, and Renee Desbiens, great goaltender also from Team Canada, and Laura Stacey, a forward from Hockey Canada. Now, New York has Abby Rock, a forward from USA program, Alex Carpenter, a forward from the USA program, and we're also hearing reports that Micah Zandy Hart will also sign with New York. That's not official, at least it's not official. Ottawa has Emily Clark, a forward, Brianne Jenner, a forward, and Emrance Mashmeyer, a goaltender. And for Toronto, Renata Fast, Blair Turnbull. And I left the name at the top of the list, if you're watching on YouTube, for last, because we are going to hear from Sarah Nurse on today's episode of Locked On NHL. You can check out the full Locked On Women's Hockey segment for today. That's Friday, September 8th. Let me take you to my interview with Sarah Nurse. You get to sign with PWHL Toronto. It's been officially announced. How you feeling?
It's so surreal. I'm so incredibly grateful that I was able to fit in the puzzle that Gina was wanting to build, and to be, one of the foundational building blocks of a franchise that I think is as prestigious as Toronto. I couldn't be more happy.
It was announced that Brian Burke will be the first executive director. So how did that come about? Did the players pick that? Was it with the league? Was it collaborative? Was Brian just like, yeah, I'm just going to do the thing? Like, how'd that happen?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because so our bargaining committee, Brianne Jenner, Hillary Knight, Kendall Coyne-Schofield, Liz Knox, and myself, we are a part of the interim executive board until the executive board can actually be directed at season start. And so we were like, we need an executive director for our Players Association because we are players. So we kind of put out feelers within the industry and, got some applicants through word of mouth and different things like that. So we actually interviewed 4, I believe, applicants, and Berkey was obviously one of them. And just immediately after speaking with him, we knew as a group that he was the one. He is somebody that has gone to bat for us. He is somebody that's been supportive of the women's game for so incredibly long. And so we knew pretty immediately. We were able to call him back, and he had tears in his eyes. And I understand, like, he could have a lot of jobs in a lot of different places. He could have probably worked for the league if he wanted to, but he totally understands how important and impactful his position is. And he's so excited to work with us. He's on the clock at all times. He's sending texts at all hours of the night. But he's so ready to get this thing going and be the executive director.
Well, when I talked with Troy Ryan about you, we had a whole hour and a half conversation, but his name has been tossed around. So I'm not going to completely put you on the spot, although blink 5 times if he is going to be the coach. I mean, I'm waiting. No, just jokes, but also, I mean, if you want to, that's fine. But generally speaking, what do you have to say about Troy Ryan, who also has been a part of the women's national team, as you said, in that period where it was really time to dig a little deeper and establish what kind of program you want it to be moving forward?
Roy, I think it's kind of funny. Him and I feel like we've almost grown up together a little bit. And I credit so much to me making that 2018 Olympic team to Troy. I'm pretty proud of the evolution and, the working relationship that we've been able to build. And, whatever team in the PWHL that gets to hire Troy, it's going to be a very lucky franchise. So I'll have to talk to Gina about that, but very, very lucky.
All right. I'm going to tell her Sarah sent me. I mentioned that free agency September 1st through the 10th. After that, teams will then go through a draft process, and the draft is going to snake. So Minnesota has the first pick, but then they won't pick again until I believe it's pick 11 and 12. And so the PWHL is doing that. Teams have the capability to sign their first few players in free agency. Then a good majority of their players will come through the draft. Then there's another free agent period after the draft so that the teams can shore up their rosters ahead of the season, where puck drop is expected for January 2024. So our next guest is Madison Packer. She won a championship with the Metropolitan Riveters in what was then the National Women's Hockey League, and then the name changed to the Premier Hockey Federation. She's been the captain, has played with the Riveters her entire pro career, and Madison Packer is one of those players that will either be selected in the draft or on the bookend of the draft and the second free agency period. But let's go to a snippet from my interview with Madison Packer so you can learn from her what her process is going to be for the upcoming draft and free agency period. For you, there are 6 PWHL teams. How many teams have you reached out to and or heard from as you get ready for the draft on September 18th?
So to this point, I've only reached out to one team because I'm hoping to land in a specific market. If that doesn't happen, we'll adjust our strategy. It'll be a different approach. I will talk to anyone that wants to talk to me, but right now I'm focused on trying to stay close to home if that's a possibility for me. And if it isn't, then we'll pivot and we'll start having some more conversations.
So just as a recap for our listeners, the PWHL markets are Ottawa, Montreal, and Toronto in Canada. And then you have Minnesota, Boston, and what is being called the New York team, might be tri-state. So since Michigan is not in one of those teams, is it safe to assume that the team that you're eyeing is the PWHL New York team?
Yes.
What are some of the things that you're looking forward to seeing a few years out as far as how the league can grow from here?
Yeah, I think that we were on the right track with the PHF. I think that if you look at, we always say, okay, PHF finished season 8, we were going on season 9. I think you and I have talked before. I always kind of looked at it like the PHF really took stride after the catastrophic bubble. That was when we really pivoted and got more innovative with things. The professionalism elevated a little bit. Resources were heightened. There was a bigger investment from the owners at that point to commit more from a salary and resource standpoint to the athletes. So we started to move in the right direction. That said, nothing's perfect. There was definitely more to be had. I think that the former PW players and their leadership and vision included a lot of what was happening at the PHF, also included some elevation to that. They had a different idea of what to prioritize from a player resource standpoint, all valid. So I think that you're going to see all of that coming together, and really we're starting anew. So I think it'll be interesting to see whether I'm involved as a player or I'm not, and I'm an outsider looking in. I think it's going to be a bit of a step backward, and I don't mean that in a disparaging or negative way. I just think that people need to level their expectations, right? This isn't a new PW or a new PHF or a new anything. This is its own brand new, from the bottom up, we're starting anew. And so they're going to make mistakes. Everybody does. They'll make mistakes that were made in the PW. They'll make mistakes that were made in the NWHL. They'll make mistakes that were made in the PHF because it's new people learning and making decisions. But there's also so much more money and so many more resources and so much more committed to making this successful and for the long haul, that those mistakes will be corrected and learned from at a much quicker rate. So I don't think it's out of the question to see, okay, maybe a few hiccups in the beginning, but then it's going to take flight. Because again, a lot of these things are things that have been done and learned, but nobody really knows what to look out for, right? You think you've got all the boxes checked, and then you show up on the first day and you're like, we don't have socks, like something ridiculous, right? There's just always something that someone doesn't think of. That said, a lot of those things have happened, and a lot of those minds are still in the mix, so they'll catch those things. And again, money buys things, and there's a lot more money. There's a lot more marketing resources. There are a lot more, now sponsors willing to get involved because their money's not going to compete against one another. So when I say a step back, I don't mean it as a bad thing. I think that they're going to be really excited to jump in and get things going, and then we'll learn a couple things, not in a ridiculously hard way, and it'll just keep going up and up from there. And I think that this league is really going to just glow and shine in a way we've never seen, somewhere probably around year 2 or 3, like mid 2 to 3. They're really going to figure it out, hit a stride. Maybe at that point there's other owners in the mix. I hope to see some NHL involvement, some partners with whether it's teams or whatever. But those are all very real things now, that there's only one group of, one team or one league and one group of players working towards that goal. This isn't year 9 of the PHF or year 6 of the PW. This is year 1 of a new league, and it's going to grow much more quickly and pop off. But it's going to take a little time in the beginning to get things smooth.
And as we close out for this Locked On NHL Women's Hockey Spotlight segment, you and I had the opportunity to chat for a different outlet, and you opened with a very particular way. And I want to just give you the opportunity, if you'd like, to close with that same message.
Yeah, well, thank you. I just want to note and acknowledge that there have been a lot of people who have worked really hard to showcase women's hockey, professional hockey across North America, and those players won't be able to do so or have the opportunity in the PWHL. But their contributions should always be recognized, even though they may not be out on the ice. I have tremendous gratitude and respect for those individuals. And I hope that they feel a great sense of pride when they see the players hit the ice in January, knowing that they have ownership of where women's hockey is today because of their dedication and sacrifice in the beginning to get the ball rolling.
Players have had to declare that they want to play in the PWHL for them to be eligible to be drafted or signed in free agents. But what's going to be the strategy for Minnesota? Again, they shored up. They have 2 forwards and a defender, but do they go with a goaltender with the number 1 pick? Well, I guess you're just going to have to tune in to the next Women's Hockey Spotlight. By then, we'll have had the draft. It will be in person. There'll be media availability there. And of course, right here on Locked On NHL, we will keep you up to date. All right, Erica L. Ayala signing off for another Women's Hockey Spotlight. Let me take you back to Rachel and Gil.
And I want to thank Erica Ayala once again for the Women's Hockey Spotlight. We do that here on the Friday show every other week, and a very exciting time in women's hockey right now. So glad to have Erica aboard to keep us updated with those great interviews. Rachel, exciting time in the NHL as well, as we are approaching rookie camps and tournaments for rookies. And it's great to know that we are very close to starting live hockey again. Which one of these tournaments has caught your eye the most?
Yeah, well, before we even get to the tournaments, I'm just excited that we will have players in NHL uniform skating at practices and scrimmages and such starting this upcoming week, so that next Friday on the show, we're going to have actual stuff to talk about when it comes to NHL players. But I love the rookie camps because there's like a different intensity to them than there was for the development camps that happened over the summer. Those are billed as more learning experiences and such, and, increasing skills and figuring out what they need to work on in this upcoming season. Rookie camp is a lot more competitive because some of these guys are battling for NHL spots. And, some of them, they're trying to figure out where they fit in on a pro team, or should they go back to junior hockey? And there's like a lot of questions around it. So, I do think that the meaningfulness and the intensity kick it up a notch for rookie camps. And then you're right, we do have these tournaments that come up. Obviously with my Flyers, they just have a home or a back-to-back rookie series with the New York Rangers, and that'll be played in Allentown, where the Flyers AHL affiliate, the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, play. So it's nice for the fans there to be able to get to see the rookies, and it's like pretty much equidistant from New York and Philly, pretty close in terms of travel time. So fans from both teams will have a chance to go see their kids play.
Yeah, and that's always a plus. And you can usually get, these are not held in big NHL arenas most of the time. You can get a lot closer to the players, which is definitely a benefit for the fans. And there's always in these tournaments and even in rookie camps, there's always one or two players per team who surprise a little bit, and all of a sudden they become part of the conversation. Hey, we didn't think this guy would be ready, but boy, does he look good, and maybe he has a better chance of either making the team this year or a year or two down the road than we had initially thought.
Yeah, and I'm excited for all those stories to pop up from around the league. And, there's some of these tournaments that have been going on for a while now. The one in Traverse City, Michigan, love that one. It's a big middle of the country tournament, I guess you can call it. But Detroit, Columbus, Dallas, and the Leafs are playing in this one. And almost all of these tournaments start next week, like on September 15th. So after a couple days at rookie camp. So we'll talk more about them next week as well. But I love that one. The one up in Buffalo should be pretty competitive because you have the Sabres there with the Habs and the Bruins and the Senators. And we just talked about, Jake Sanderson. Obviously, he's not going to be in the rookie games because he's now a grizzled vet after 1 year, I guess. But I think that, all of these teams are in interesting positions, and to see like what the future, especially of the Bruins, as they could be on the precipice of, having to reconstitute what they're doing here with the changes in their roster. The Sabres have some excellent up and coming prospects there. The Senators are on the move. So I think that one is going to be one of the more interesting ones to watch.
Yeah, it certainly will be. And the other thing I love about these rookie tournaments, because so many of them are geographically based, you have your rivals going up against each other, and it almost builds the rivalry before it gets started. These players are just coming out of junior or college or what have you, and they get this opportunity to go up against some of the biggest rivals that their organization has. And it's like the grassroots foundational building of these rivalries that start before a player. Like, okay, here's the first time you're putting on an NHL uniform and going up against another team, and already you're learning the importance of this rivalry.
Oh, absolutely. You got to teach them young, right? Who the big competitors are. And but I do appreciate that aspect of it as well. And, these kids are really working hard to prove themselves and have a good showing. One of the other interesting ones is out west in Nevada that Vegas is hosting with the Ducks, the Yotes, the Avs, the Kings, and the Sharks. I think there's a lot of young talent in that Pacific Division and in that group of teams, especially, with the Yotes having a million draft picks. Let's see them all out there, right? The Ducks have a bunch of young players that are looking real good, as do the Sharks. So I'm actually really excited to watch that one as well.
Well, I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day, everydayers. Monday on the show, I will be back as I discuss the latest news with 3 of our local hosts from around the league. Make sure you join us for that. And don't forget, Locked On NHL, Monday through Friday, all off season long. And now that training camps are and rookie tournaments are getting started, we will have all of that covered for you. Want to thank Erica Ayala again for the bi-weekly Women's Hockey Spotlight. I'm Gil Martin. You could find me on Twitter at IceWarsNYR VSNYI. She's Rachel Donner. You could find her on Twitter at RMiriam. Have a great weekend, everyone. Stay safe, and thanks again for listening and watching the Locked On NHL podcast.